Hello, Luke.
Hello, Olly. How are you?
This should be fun.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know you, tell me a little bit about yourself and all that sort of thing.
Everyone knows me.
Good.
Yeah, so I'm Olly. Olly Mourant. I was born in Jersey. I'm schooled in Jersey, and I've done quite a lot since leaving school. In between that and about 30 odd jobs before setting up my own business in 2002, to coming away from that business and moving down to Australia, and then subsequently coming back and co-founding Rialto Investment Partners with your good self.
Well done. Yeah, that was a great idea. Yeah, so in terms of today, we're just going to ask you a few questions. The idea is that, maybe somebody gets something, we might get something out of this, somebody else might get something out of this in terms of what you've learned over the last sort of 22 years of being in business.
Yeah.
The title for the podcast is #GreatAtBusiness.
I love it.
Because quite often you and I will use that phrase when we something goes well, or we've had a good idea, or something else. And I think there's lots of different ways of being great. So great doesn't have to be unicorn, hundreds of millions or whatever. There's small giants by Stephen Covey and all that sort of stuff. We're talking about what's great in terms of the context of Jersey businesses.
Yeah.
And, longevity is important. And longevity is, if you survive more than 10 years in business, I think there's only, I can't remember exactly the statistics, but sort of 10% or something. It's a very small number that can actually survive that long. And you've done it before, and other people that I want to talk to have done it before. And it's just trying to get underneath the skin of how that happens.
Yeah.
For people that want to become entrepreneurs, because there's so few people coming through that I see that actually want to take the risk on of doing that. And it's a big part of the success of Jersey and the economy. And it's also can be a lot of fun, but can be quite stressful. So those are the sorts of things that we'll just have a chat about. And see.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, sounds good.
What's your definition of being great at business? How do you see that?
Feels very arrogant, doesn't it? Great at business, but nonetheless, yeah. I'm hearing where you're coming from. I think for me, it's what the outcome is, what you're trying to achieve, and the impact that you're having on other people. And what I mean by that is not necessarily being, to use your point, great at business being a unicorn or a flash in the pan thing that is simply for making money. That's that for me, that there needs to be some purpose behind what it is that you're trying to achieve. And that might be, sometimes it's obviously personal purpose, but if you're actually having a positive impact on the lives of others within the community, then I think that makes a business great. I mean, it obviously needs everything else around that in terms of financial success to keep going over the long term. But first and foremost, I think, and for me, like I say, very personally, it's got to have a positive impact on people, basically.
So, in terms of the getting started, taking you back to, so when did Enhance start?
2001, I believe the company was founded in 2001.
Okay, so but 6 months, 9 months before that, what happened? How did you think about it? What was the plan?
So I was probably at that stage towards the tail end of a plethora of jobs across mainly financial services within investment banking, stockbroking, private banking, and then later into trust. And at that time, I'd worked with a guy that a lot of people will know locally, a chap called James Painter. And I worked with him at ABN AMRO when I was about 17 or 18 years old. I guess I was his bitch in some respects, but nonetheless, James taught me a lot. And I went away traveling. I came back from traveling, and I was sort of at a bit of a loose end, really. And I caught up with James, and James was working for a global trust company, and he was building out an investor services department for this trust company. He needed some help. I became his bitch again. And James and I worked within this trust company organization. And the reason we got together was that Trustee Act 2000 had come through. Trust companies and trust company directors were getting sued essentially because it was their duty of care to look after investment assets, and that started creating a real problem for trust companies and trustees. And so we were building out an investor services department for the said trust company, monitoring performance, suitability, and risk of investment portfolios for this firm. And I suppose I'd done that for about 18 months when James suggested to me on one beer-fueled lunch hour that there would be small to medium-sized trust companies that were going to be under the same pressure as the large global players that would need this service delivery. Now, there was another competitor at the time based in Guernsey called Asset Risk Consultants. Jersey didn't really have anybody locally. And as a result of that, James and I created what was then Enhanced Investments as an outsource model. And we started winning small, medium-sized trust companies. And that was the start of that business, really.
And was it you were young and actually there was very little risk because there wasn't kids and stuff like that? Or what was was there any thought that it wouldn't work? Or did you just think, I'm going to give it a go? Or you didn't care about the money? Or what was the decision to actually say, right, let's do it. I'm going to go with James.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that sounds worrying, doesn't it? Oh, I didn't really care about the money. If I'm really honest, Luke, I think where I was is that I left school when I was 15 years old. I didn't do my GCSEs at school. And at that point in time, I had one or two teachers when I must have been, 16, sort of suggest to me that you're going to struggle to amount to anything without your GCSEs or further education. And I think probably from that point in time, there was a motivation for me personally. It wasn't really for anybody else, or maybe it was. I don't know. I was young and egotistical, but for me, my motivation was very much that I would make a success out of my future and my career, and I wasn't going to let other people dictate that. But granted, and to your point, I was young. I was living at home. I didn't have children. I didn't have a mortgage, and I had a family unit that was supportive of what I was trying to do. And actually, it's funny that we're talking about this now. I actually owe quite a lot of thanks to my mum, because she sort of said to me when I was young, work hard and put yourself in the right places, and opportunities will present themselves. And she wasn't wrong. And so I don't know whether I've skipped around that question, but
no, that's fine. So in some ways it was, there was an opportunity to do something exciting. You'd had a lot of jobs in finance before, and it was, well, if I give this a go, the downside risk isn't too high. And what was it about James that sort of you felt, was it just strong friendship, or was there from a business perspective, was there visionary behavior, or what was it where you sort of felt you knew that this was the right opportunity to take?
Is James going to see this? No, I'm joking. James, I not to use your same words, but he was a visionary, extremely confident in his own ability, which which really resonated with me, because James and I, whilst we're very different energy profiles, if you like, James very headstrong. I sort of we balanced one another rather well. But yeah, in terms of innovation, visionary, knew what the clients needed to quite a detail, and so I would be being his wingman at that age where he had 10 years more experience than I did. It worked well. It was it worked well.
Good. And in terms of the first couple of years, then, how, going from the excitement to the reality, was there any major shocks? What should people expect when they're setting up in a new business, even when the market demand is clearly there, and there's they're building a product? Was there anything unexpected that came along, or was there anything that? You did expect that to happen? It did happen? Or what was your first? It was a long time ago, but
So I think a really good dose of naivety is really helpful. So, and what I mean by that is, I think when I look at a number of things I've done in business over my life so far, if you knew all of the things that were going to happen along the way, I think a lot more people wouldn't do it.
yeah,
The highs and the lows of being an early stage business, really fighting for clients, and working extremely long hours is it was hard, and I mean, look, you've known me long enough to know that I do get really excited towards the shiny thing in the corner, and that does actually keep me going. But I mean, looking back then, the product offering was quite obvious. We had a really good network locally in Jersey. People trusted us, and so I don't remember anything early happening that was completely untoward. Yeah.
okay.
It was a lot of
And and people trusted you. So how was that, Bill? Because that's the backbone to most of business in Jersey, is working with people that know you and trust you and respect you. You were quite young. James has been around for quite a long time. The first sort of 4 or 5 clients, how did you get going with that and have the trust to have them, because they're all regulated financial services providers. So, they're going to want and the company was 2 or 3 people at that stage. What was that initial process of getting those initial clients on? How long did it take? And what was the key to making it? Was there anything in the sales process that really helped get those first few across the line?
Yeah, so good question. In terms of an actual sales process, I don't think we ever had anything that grand.
Okay.
And you talked there about trust and how we built trust. I think when you've been in a market the size of Jersey, you can ruin your reputation quite quickly. I don't know why I'm going off on that sort of tangent, but if you're known as the person who shows up and does a good job, and you're generally a decent person, then you're a lot of the way there. For us at Enhance and the product, people were at risk by not doing something with us or our competitors. Now, our competitors had been around a lot longer than we had. And I genuinely do believe that between what we were doing and our competitors over the water, we were a very similar price point and we had a very similar product offering. And I always look back on that, or on that time, and I think to myself that people either went with them because of the relationships there or the relationships with us. Now, I was young and there was a lot of booze involved. There was, there's no getting away from that. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There was a lot of boozing at lunchtime. There was a lot of dinners. There was a lot of networking. There was a lot of running around the place. And that built relationships that, you just can't get away from it. So,
do you think it was easier back then than it would be now, bearing in mind how the world's changed and how people it's more a coffee culture than a lunch culture? What do you think? Just different, or?
Yeah, maybe it was easier back then. Maybe it was because deals were built on staying out the latest with a client. They remembered you last, or they knew what they.
Well, there's an honesty that comes with.
They knew what you witnessed the night before. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess where are we now in 2025? And I occasionally meet people in saunas.
Yeah, yes, you do.
I mean, the world has changed quite dramatically. It's quite depressing. But, So just on that though, the sales process, there wasn't really one. But what I would also say, which I think is important, is there was myself, James, and Richard in the early parts of the business, and we were all quite different in terms of personality. So we worked well together as a group of us. Sometimes James and I would work well, or myself and Richard would work well.
Yeah.
So we always had quite a good horses for courses approach to the sales process.
Yeah.
And I think that stood us in really good stead, it not just being one person. And actually, Luke, we're talking about early stage businesses, entrepreneurialism, and all that kind of thing. And the one thing I would say that benefited us hugely was that there was 3 of us pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah.
I think it's probably quite a lonely place for people when they're out there on their own without people to bounce off day in, day out.
And did you guys have to sort of salary sacrifice for a while? Was it, how long did it take to start earning what you would have done in employment before? Was it straight from the off? Did you get investment externally?
No, and I didn't mean to. And I didn't mean to laugh there. Actually, the reason I started chuckling was because I remember a day where I got a lift home with one of the chaps who I was working with, and he picked up the phone to a potential client at the time and said to the client, "Oh, I'm just dropping Olly, the co-founder, off to his mum's house. She's just made his bed in his racing car bed." It was like I was always at the brunt of all the jokes because I was that much younger than all the others, and so just to say how it is, the funding for me to live came from my family, and I ultimately paid them back. But for the others, they were in different circumstances. They did have mortgages and they did have children on the way. And so the pressure that they were under in comparison to me was different. Yeah, that is 100%. But no, did we take any? There was a couple of loans that came from friends on commercial terms. All of which got paid out.
And then so after 2001, when do you sort of feel like you got to sustainability in terms of you're paying yourselves sort of a commercial wage?
Yeah.
You've got clients. You've got say 10, 15 people in the team. How did that? When did that happen?
I'd say that took. It's a while ago now, isn't it? But I'd say we'd built a fairly robust business after 3 years.
Okay, well, that was pretty quick.
Yeah, it was quick, and we, as I said earlier, like the demand was there, and we were there putting the effort and the hours in to build the revenue of the business quite quickly. I think we took on staff quite often, almost prematurely, of needing them, so that we had we were that confident in building the revenues that we wanted the staff there to deliver. I think it's also a really important point that I owe a lot of thanks to people in the local community, senior figureheads in trust companies that put their trust in an enterprise of only couple of years old, few years old. Yeah. And they really sort of, that was like the springboard. When you're doing portfolio review work for small, medium-sized trust companies, and you're charging £100 a report per quarter, you need a few of them to start paying yourself commercial rates. And one thing I would say that was quite interesting at the time was that we always anticipated a world where bank-owned trust companies, for example, or the global players wouldn't come to us. And our working assumption was that why would they come to us when they can create their own department, like the first firm that James and I worked for? And luck rather than judgment, it would be fair to say. But what became quite apparent was that these bank-owned trust companies had their own investment management division. And because a lot of the trust assets were going to their investment management decision capability, they weren't then able to independently assess what was going on. And I think that was the tipping point, really, where we went from we became a proper business when high street names were appointing us, and they were appointing us again over our competition 9 times out of 10 because of the relationship that we were building. We were in the community a lot. Yeah.
So in terms of, there's always an element of unexpected consequences of what you're doing. That was a positive unexpected consequence. I mean, were there, in terms of the decisions around growth, were there 2 or 3 things, over the sort of maybe over the whole lifespan of Enhance, where you think that was, we thought about a problem, we identified how to solve it, and we went for it, and it went really, it was a really good decision to do that, with the benefit of hindsight. But there are 2 or 3 moments where you thought you weren't sure about a particular direction of travel, but actually we're going to do this and we're going to go for it, and that was a great call. What were the things that you...
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to remember the dates exactly when these things happened, but that's a really interesting point, and one that I've thought about. Appointing purpose. Appointing you guys, like it sounds like I'm dressing this up, but I'm actually not. If I look back now and think that we were best part of a multi-million turnover business, and AKA me, the accountant with no maths GCSE, as I mentioned earlier, doing a lot of the. For one, it sounds very grand, but the bookkeeping or putting numbers together wasn't obviously my skill set. So bringing you guys on board gave us that visibility, and I guess more confidence as well to make those decisions. And I guess for us at that point in time as well, that was a spend, to bring you guys in.
I think you were about 35. Were you at Charles Beeson House at that point? I think was when I first met you.
Yeah.
And
yes, okay.
It was about 30, I think you were just getting too big for Charles Beeson House. And the main thing at that point, because you were more than sustainable and profitable, it was about speed of growth and risk, taking how much money can you spend on future growth.
Yeah.
And that's a really good point to be involved, because, having clarity of where you're at, but also the multiple different scenarios and what the consequences of those things are, just brings that level of confidence it brings, knowing, what you need to achieve to make a particular action make sense.
Yeah.
Is helpful, right? And it's about the future. It's about understanding where you are right now, but also what it could look like. And I think that's one of the things that we've done over a long time to really help people is do that. And Enhance was I think you were still only in one jurisdiction at that point. But that was the springboard to move into all the different countries that you went for.
All the other great places to go and travel to. Yeah. Well, also, it goes without saying as well that not everything is strawberries and cream the whole time. No. And there were periods not long after we started working together where the speed of growth for the business and the pressure we put on the cash flow of the organization put us into hot water. There's no point dressing that up. That's what happened. And I think had myself and the rest of the board been left to our own devices to try and sort those out and get some assistance from the banks and things like that, then we would have had troubles. So that was a key sort of decision point for us, I suppose, to work with you guys. I mean, you touched on Charles Beeson House. That's actually quite interesting as well, because that business, the business that was in that office prior to us was a local hedge fund who'd spent a small fortune on that fit out. And prior to that, we had founded the business. We were actually above Bergerac Wine Cellar up on Hill Street there. That was where our first office. You smoke out the window. And we were there for a period. And then we moved here to the ground floor of Hope Street, where of course we are today. And there was a point where you needed to, we could deliver. We had the product, we had the people, we had the reputation, but we didn't quite have the perception for some of the clients that we were going after. And what I mean by that is, the bank-owned trust companies, the family offices, multi or single family offices that we wanted to work with, coming to Hope Street wasn't quite the right visual vibe for us. The vibe, I guess. And so that was another point. And I remember the total legend of a man, the late John Cattell, said to us, just do it, guys. Just crack on. It will definitely play out in your favor. And we took on Charles Beeson House. We didn't need all the space. It was very grandiose. And I don't think there was ever a way of really measuring it. But it would be fair to say that the clients started to come through. There is no doubt about it. And when people came into that building, and we did the same again later on by moving into Hill Street. So that was another decision point, I suppose, that you just jumped in, and that made sense.
It's difficult to tell how much sort of brand value sounds a bit wanky, but the how much brand value there is in showing people what you're about, how you look, how you act, professionalism, coming into the ground floor of Hope Street compared to going into the hedge fund office is two different things. Showing that you've grown up as a business, that you can, you deserve to be there, etc. And so it is something that has, for accountants like me, it's like, well, how many people can you get into a space, and is that the right space for them? I think that's been one of my things, has been doing a lot of research into how you create that right perception. And some client bases will see something like that and go, well, am I paying for this office rather than for the service,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
So it's trying to find the right blend of that. And in your environment, with those sort of, that sort of money being involved and those sorts of clients being involved, that's hindsight's wonderful, but it does make a lot of sense that worked out.
No, definitely. And I think there's something in it. I think there's something in it with the team as well. Not just the client perception, but actually the sort of pride that your team feel because of the environment to which they're sat in.
Yeah.
And I can reflect back on that. I know it's a different world now, but it was pinstripe suits and people look smart, and it was I guess that was a bit our brand back then where we were.
In terms of the decisions to go outside Jersey, so what went well with that? What went badly with that? And what would you think that was the growth too fast or not? Or would you do the same things again? How do you look back at those decisions to grow? And what's your gut feeling on what you may or may not have done differently?
That shiny thing over there again.
Right. Yeah.
No. Jokes aside. So I think the starting point of that is that we had sort of done more or less, I believe, what we believed we could achieve in Jersey. And so how were we going to scale up and grow into the future became a question for us. I would say we did travel quite a lot and we enjoyed it. And, this was our business. And so there was something in that for all of us, that it was like getting away and traveling and building our brand and our business in other geographic areas made a lot of sense. We did quite a lot with Step at that point in time, before us actually having a physical location or company in these different jurisdictions. But I think some of it was actually client-led as well. So Jersey-based trust companies that had a presence out in Cayman or out in Switzerland, for example, was sort of saying to us at the time, we need your services out there. If you guys are on the ground, then you're going to get the work. So that felt like enough for us to warrant starting in different jurisdictions. And again, it was a while ago, so I can't remember the timing of which ones came first, but there was a point where we were in Geneva, we were in Cayman, we were in London, we were in Switzerland, and we were out in Singapore. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out in the way that we saw it happening. So the volumes of work that were coming from the organizations wasn't as large as we were sort of led to believe. I'm not blaming them. We should have done our own homework before doing it. But I think, I'm being really...
Well, the quality of the service would have gone up as a result of having, because you were already doing work for those companies in those countries. It was just you didn't have a local presence. So it was a natural thing to do. But that expansion outside Jersey, when so much of financial services or professional services is relationship based.
Yeah.
The guy, as a team, you guys had been really on it for a long time locally. Just going back and going through that process with people in those countries is really, really difficult, and building those relationships, because there are other people already in those places that have built those already. So it's just an interesting thing to think about, is sort of speed of growth when you've got the opportunity. And it's one of the things we talk about a lot is like, how fast do we try and grow versus how do we make sure that we're looking after what we've got and trying to find the right balance? And the problem is you can never find that right balance.
No, that's true.
And so, what are you, and trying to go through that process And sometimes you have to go, well, I know what the spreadsheet says and it doesn't look great, but actually we're going to give it a go, right? And that too is difficult. Yeah, it's interesting to hear. Yeah, because it was just so many countries so fast.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was probably within 3-4 years that you guys went from 1 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds mental now, doesn't it? It's just like, what were we thinking?
Well, no, but, you know, there were good reasons why. There's always good reasons why you do these things. And it's very difficult to be the person that goes, well, hang on, should we just wait a bit, you know? But then, you know, it's not like any, you know, I don't know much about the company these days, but you know,
still going.
Yeah, still going, and they're, you know, they seem to be doing well, and you know, so that's good.
We had, you know, we had belief in our team around us as well. You know, the senior team members. So for both, you know, for both the Cayman Islands and for Singapore, it was a case of, you know, the guys wanting to, the guys wanted to leave Jersey and have a crack at that. And I think we were prepared to take that risk. And we had faith in the people. And, you know, both guys that went into those different jurisdictions at different times had a real belief in what they were going to achieve. We backed them because we wanted to. We'd all work together and we trust one another over a long period of time. And it wasn't, you know, it wasn't solely down to those guys that it didn't work out. You know, that's just one of those things. So, but you make really interesting points there, Lou. I think that the speed to which we were doing things was felt insane.
Well, you were diversifying in terms of geography, but also diversifying in terms of the product offering, because you had 4 companies at that point. You know, doing the MPI through STEP and Treasury, and then the investment management offering as well. I mean, that, and you know, in their own ways, they were all doing varying degrees of well. The core product was keeping the, you know, enabling you to go off and do those other things. And it's just, you know, again, how do you pick between product diversification and geographical diversification? And can you do both at the same time? Well, it's bloody difficult, isn't it? You need a lot of money to sustain all of that stuff. And hindsight's 2020, but and you were all very ambitious and it had all gone well for a very long time. So it was difficult to decide, you know, what do we do and what don't we do? Just repeating myself. Yeah, I mean, the benefit, I guess, of experience is, I mean, would you do anything with the benefit of hindsight? Would you do anything differently or not? Or
I would have taken less cash flow risk on some of the projects. And I look at the way you and I work together now, and the what's the word I'm looking for? The discipline and the structure around how we budget for our own businesses within the group, and actually having some understanding of actually how you're going to go out and achieve those things, rather than we grew this much last year, so we're going to do the same again. And I don't think we ever got to a level of granularity that we do these days. And so that's my only, I wouldn't even really call it a regret, because I believe you kind of learn from all of these things. You know, I'm not going to go into any sort of cliche philosophical comments on it, but there were times where the pressure was enormous. And so, yeah, I would have gone a bit slower in certain areas, both geographical, less so on product actually, but less geographical.
Yeah, I think that the granularity around forecasting, in terms of, you know, we've got this cost base, we want to grow, so let's create 200 grand more revenue, 400 grand more revenue. It's just not enough to be able to, and you know, having those conversations 10 years ago, there was such a lot of growth that there was always a feeling that, well, it's going to continue to keep coming. So there was some clarity around, you know, what needed to be achieved. But because it had always been achieved in the past, there wasn't then that drilling in, well, how much of a market is there left and how much of the market is. And so, and you can analyze things to death and you don't need to do that. But it's just, I think sometimes the emotional reasons why you want to do something can sort of it can cloud the vision, and with us as well, right, in terms of what we're trying to achieve. And it's just having someone there to say, well, hang on, yeah, really, and just be that challenge. And that's why, we've got decent sized boards now, and there's some negative people on there and there's some positive people on there. And it's trying to get the right balance between all those people in the right way. In terms of the technology, so, you were, in order to reduce staff costs, you were heavily, in terms of just not take on as much as you were growing, you were investing a lot of money in the tech. I mean, what were the best decisions you made around which investments to make, which ones that weren't? And, was there anything that other people could learn about how Enhance built their tech stack that you could see them benefiting from knowing?
So I think there's two parts that sort of are still quite prevalent in my mind. Working with the guys at C5 to create automated process in terms of data from investment managers around the globe into our sort of system, if you like, to crunch the numbers was enormous, because, right on in the early days, we had bums on seats, basically, who were, taking PDF valuations, plugging in the numbers. The accuracy rate was quite low as well.
What does that mean? What does accuracy rate mean?
As in, you're relying on one person to punch in a load of numbers.
Manual error.
Manual error. You've got the cost of those people. Mind-numbingly boring job, but because we were such a fast-growing business and fun to be in, people stayed and sort of did that job. But over in the fullness of time, automating those feeds of data, so you didn't have the human error, you didn't have the bums on the seats, obviously made a massive difference to the business. I think by the end of it, there was probably about 600 different investment management, when I was still there, 600 different investment management companies around the globe feeding data into us. So that was huge, and that drove a lot of efficiency.
And did you borrow to do that investment in the tech, or was it from cash flow? Do you remember? I don't remember.
We probably borrowed.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
That makes sense, doesn't it? If you've got something that's going to dramatically create economies of scale or scalability, and you know that you've got a market that you're going to go after, provided you can pay debt back, that's great, right?
Makes sense.
It just makes sense. Whereas from cash flow is just exacerbating that pressure, and you can grow slightly slower.
Yeah.
So the decision around that being based on, well, what's my assessment or our assessment of the market in the future, that just makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Because I think it was quite a sizable chunk of annual revenue that was invested into the platform.
Yeah.
But it made a lot of sense, right? I mean, you said yourself, so.
Yeah, and I mean, that was really more so from an intern, that didn't really have a massive impact on the actual clients in terms of product delivery. Okay, it sped things up, made things more efficient from our end. But I think one of the things that we invested in from a sort of tech point of view was the utilization of the data that we had coming into the organization. So creating that, our sort of joint venture with Step, I think was a bit of a game changer for us, really, because suddenly we were exposed to the global body for the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners. And, I look back on that as well, actually, Luke, and the way James came up with it as a high-level conceptual idea. And I do remember the day, when you've got a million other things going on, thinking, is this guy mental? Are we actually going to do this? And I look at that business now, and that's it's outside of Enhance now, but it's still growing. It's still got investment managers going through it. And it provided really, really powerful information and data from what we had within our organization to thousands of people globally. I mean,
so it meets a need. It meets a need that hadn't been serviced before, and that's why it's continued to have the longevity that it's got, which is great.
So I think those would be the two things that, the main sort of highlights, I guess, from investment in tech and evolution.
So there's a lot of change coming up in terms of the way that we're using AI, the way that all the businesses are using it, the way the demographic change in Jersey is coming, and in the government reports, stuff like that. One of the sort of key things then is we're all predicting what might or might not happen, but it's always interesting to predict what's not going to change. I mean, what's your gut feel in terms of doing business in Jersey over the next 5 years where you think won't change? What are those things that that we can hang our hats on together as we move forward for Rialto, where we're confident that there's always going to be that consistent thing there.
Let's hope it's something. Let's hope something's not going to change.
Yeah.
So I think the reason that question comes from you there, Luke, and the way we discuss it is the speed at which technology is developing, and especially with AI. I mean, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see the speed of adoption and the speed of change within financial services organizations, for example. I'll come on to what I think won't change in a second, but it's just an interesting thing that I've been sort of debating with other people, is that, you see the way in which some of these larger financial services organizations operate, and their ability to change anything quickly is quite astounding. I think we come at it from a sort of different place because we're in a very nimble, forward-thinking group of companies, so we can change quickly. But I don't think the rest of the world is going to change as quickly as we maybe think. In terms of a constant for the next 5 years and probably beyond, to be honest, because I don't think the robots are coming here entirely. Let's hope not. But I think it's going to be personal relationship, connection, and trust. I think that's still going to be something that we need to really hang our hats on. Community. And so I don't think the machine is going to take that away over the next 5 years. I don't know whether I've necessarily answered your question in the way that.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of not changing, we're all going to need to probably, the way that we do our work. A lot of people have said this, and it's a bit cliche, but your job's not going to be taken by AI. It's going to be taken by someone who can use AI, right? That's the key thing. And I think it's not fair to say that there won't be some change as a result of technology coming in terms of the number of people required. But then loads of people are leaving Jersey, and maybe that just means there's a natural change. People are going to continue to. I think it's going to be tough for a lot of people to continue to live here well with the price of that. The housing and living here continues to be people moving away, and so in terms of new markets, I think product diversification is going to be important to some degree, but also making sure that you're looking after your existing customers and finding ways to increase your market share. Those are things that are always going to happen all the time. And it's just that the way that we do that, I think, is going to be different, but the consistency is in the outcomes that we want from being in business locally. And so, it's an incredibly, I'm an accountant, I don't get that excited, but, I think it is an exciting time. We've got a real opportunity to leverage technology in new ways. There's talk around, not being blockbuster to Netflix, and how we make sure that we're continuing to innovate, and innovation is constant too. It's just sometimes like we need to slow down how quickly we're innovating. So everybody, we get a chance to embed those things. But no, I really think that that constant is that there's going to be pressure from new businesses. There's going to be threats from them, but that will come down to how well we look after our clients and how much we innovate and sort of, start to use the tools and the processes in new ways to help them grow, and just look after them. And if we're all helping, collaborating better, and being more in partnership than being client-supplier relationships, that can only be a good thing for everybody. That's going to work really well. So, in terms of the next sort of 12 months, what's your, what the big decisions are you looking to make? What's the biggest things that you're thinking about on a regular basis at the moment in terms of the island and the business and life?
Life.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Oh, right. Okay. Outside of life, I think that for me, the thing that's not keeping me up at night, but the thing that I am sort of constantly considering is how we go about growing our own organization as a group. So I think we've done exceptionally well to get to where we are in a 5-year period. And I think, the execution of what we've done has been pretty strong. I mean, there isn't a day that goes by where somebody creates unwanted problems for us. But I guess that's part of the challenge. But it's how Jersey is a finite size market, and even with 20 years under my belt, I guess I still get quite excited about the shiny things in the corner as well. And I think that's something that's interesting for us to be considering as an organisation going into next year and beyond, to see whether and you've mentioned it, Luke, a few times. The sort of the smaller towns in southeast of England, is there a world in which, we've solved a problem for owner managers that are looking for succession that hasn't been there in the past. Yeah. And those owner managers are going to be in other parts of the world. And it's whether we have sufficient structure and process and governance around what we're doing now to deploy that into other areas. I think that's really interesting, as a something exciting.
There's definitely. I mean, without delusions of grandeur, there's definitely people that have, indicated that there's a legacy over. I mean, it's only a short 5-year period, but that can be leveraged. I think we've still got. There's still lots of opportunity in Jersey, and there are people that potentially want to sell their businesses in the next 5 to 10 years, and delighted to talk to them when that happens. It's just making sure that it's finding that right balance, isn't it? Bringing along the team into those senior roles and sort of making ourselves redundant. It's just the speed with which that we can do that.
Yeah. Well, it's the speed of which, and it's also how that's structured. We still haven't really got that nailed yet. The sort of succession piece for the businesses that we're acquiring, that still needs some love, and it's also how you go about. We've done a good job in terms of raising debt to acquire the businesses with the structure and the way in which that's worked, and it's what the future looks like when the business continues, and we hope to keep growing.